Hello everyone, welcome to My Top 10, Episode 2. I am Alex Big Blue, and this is my top 10 favorite X-Men villains. Number 10. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is one of the all-time great strongman characters that's also super durable and hard to hurt in general. Just a real kind of quintessential bully type character. He makes such a threatening villain because, he's almost indestructible for most characters to deal with. But it's also kind of cool that he has the built-in weakness that they found out, which is where if they can get his helmet off, which is not easy, of course, but if they can get his helmet off, he is susceptible to psychic attacks, or if Rogue drains his energy or something like that. I've always found that pretty interesting that they found a weakness for him, even though he's so tough. So there's always a little chance, even though it seems daunting having to face him. But yeah, he's always a really interesting character, and whether he is throwing a truck at somebody or smashing through a house or whatever it may be, things are always more exciting when he's around. Number 9. Lady Deathstrike. So Lady Deathstrike, for one, is very cool and has always stood out for her incredibly large hands, which of course she uses to slash and tear at people because they're laced with adamantium inside. I guess that's the way you'd put it. And she's always just been a really cool character. I like her backstory with Wolverine. And I also think it's pretty cool because she's one of the few female characters in comics that is not used to look just like a kind of almost model type of woman. She's actually just her own type of character that's used for the purposes that make sense, because she is supposed to be threatening and a great warrior and an enemy for the X-Men. So it makes sense that she would be portrayed differently. Number 8. Pyro. Pyro is a really interesting character. His look is a really cool villain costume, or just a good costume in general for that matter. But yeah, I really like the colors of it and the design. I also think it's really cool that, unlike Human Torch and some other fire characters, he doesn't just engulf himself with flames, and he can't just exactly spawn them at a whim or anything like that. He has to have his contraption that he has made into his costume, where he controls the flame after something starts a flame. So I've always thought that was really cool. They talk about that on the movies too, which on the second movie, the X-Men, they actually used him pretty good on that one. But anyways, really cool how he does that and how he controls it. He can control any flame that's already created. It's just kind of a cool touch. I always like that. Like I said, his costume is really awesome. And I always like it when he shows up with the Brotherhood. I remember he was in a Hulk comic that was really interesting. Him and the other Brotherhood members fought the Hulk. It was one of the ones from my early childhood, always really interesting. And whenever him and Avalanche and Blob, I remember those three seem to be together a lot in some of those ones. And sometimes with Toad or different ones as well. But he's always just really a good villain. And he's always kind of an interesting personality and just kind of a wacky character sometimes. You never know what you're going to get out of him. But yeah, just in general, I always really like him as a part of the Brotherhood. And just him as a character's always been pretty interesting. Number 7. Sabretooth. Sabretooth has a very interesting look, very threatening and very imposing for a villain against the X-Men, of course. And his rivalry with Wolverine is one of the greatest in comics, one of the most iconic, I would say. And in general, he's pretty interesting. He's a bit of a wild card at times. And I think his claws it's pretty cool how he has his claws instead of the way Wolverine does, but it still matches up really well with him. And others, for that matter. He's very large and just a very good, threatening, cool aesthetic type of character in general. Just, like I said, pretty much all the way around an interesting character. So yeah, very cool. Number 6. The Goblin Queen. So besides the fact that she has a really cool name and a really interesting look, she has a really awesome backstory in which she's a clone of Jean Grey, of course, and she was created by Mr. Sinister, so very interesting backstory. She also has a litany of powers, including the ability to summon goblins, which is pretty awesome. I think she can also summon demons, which is kind of funny. and just all kinds of different powers, really, including, I believe, she can bring people back from the dead and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I really found out about this character in recent years and really took a liking to her character because of she's the main villain in the first arc of Mutant X, of the series Mutant X in the comics, of course. I really love that series of comics, and that run with her being the main villain is excellent. So yeah, she made her way onto this list because of that especially. But she seems to be a very cool character that I want to read more of now in the actual X-Men books as well. But yeah, just a really cool character, a lot of potential, and just really interesting. Number 5, Onslaught. Onslaught is a character that, first of all, looks like a scarier version of Magneto. He's super threatening to all the X-Men and to every character for that matter. He's really powerful, and he's, of course, his origin is really cool. He's made up of the subconscious of Charles Xavier and Magneto, so that's where he comes from. But yeah, he just really gets really powerful and really threatening in general. Just a cool character, and a great villain for the X-Men, and a really cool look to him, like I said. So yeah, really cool is Onslaught. Number 4, Apocalypse. So Apocalypse is basically the ultimate boss battle for the X-Men. He is one of the most powerful characters, one of the most interesting characters. He has a whole subset of a different story, of course, being the Age of Apocalypse. That was a really interesting story as well. He is, I think, depending on how many retcons they've done and how many different ones they refer to that, he's one of the first mutants. And he can do so many cool things. It is kind of crazy almost, because he can make his hand like a drill. He can get gigantic. He can make himself look like other people. He really is just one of the all-time great villains in general, I would say. But for me, just like he's kind of the perfect pure heel for the X-Men. And like I said, he's just a ultimate challenge for them pretty much. He also has a very unique look and just a really crazy character. So yeah, very interesting overall, I would say. Number 3, Mystique. Mystique is a character that will kind of get the job done no matter what she has to do, whether it be using weapons or, of course, her really awesome power, which is unique, where she can look like anybody, of course, where she transforms. Her looks, it's always been really cool. And her natural look is really one of the more interesting and probably standout looks in comics with, of course, her blue skin and her yellow eyes and all of that. And like I said, she's a good fighter. She uses weapons. She's very agile. She's fairly intelligent for that matter. Whether she be by herself or with the Brotherhood or any other team or whatever it may be, she's always really interesting and always a very devious character that is a true wild card, and that always makes her dangerous. Number 2, Magneto. Magneto is a really cool character because I like his costume, I like his powers, which are very interesting. The ability to control metal and the things he can do with it are pretty much limitless, just endless possibilities, really. And he's very powerful in general, so it's always great as a foil for the X-Men. His mental mutant chess game that he's always playing at all times with Professor Xavier is a really interesting part of the comics in general. It's always riveting to see those two do their ideologies, which are completely different, but at the same time they want ultimately the same thing, with mutants being, at peace. Of course, they feel different about humans, which brings me to the next point. Magneto has one of the most interesting and realistic types of backstories of anybody ever in comics, and you don't get much more grounded or realistic or tough than that, you know what I mean? And you understand, even though he's doing things you don't agree with and his methods, you understand why he's like that and why he comes to it from that. So yeah, very great backstory for Magneto for sure, and that's one of the reasons he's such an interesting character. It really makes him go because of that. And I also like the fact that he has that mask, or the helmet rather, that he wears so that so psychics like Professor Xavier and other characters can't get to his mind as well. It's pretty genius. Really cool touch as well. And like I was saying earlier, the costume with his red and purple is just one of the all-time coolest looking costumes in my opinion. And yeah, just in general, he's a great villain and a great character. Number 1. Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister is one of the coolest characters, in my opinion, out there in general. He's certainly one of my favorite overall villains, and he's definitely my favorite X-Men villain. So I think a part of the reason for that is he just looks really cool to start with. He looks sort of like a vampire with a little bit of robotics mixed in. And his powers are very interesting where his molecules, he can pretty much change them. He can take basically all kinds of damage, heal himself, or put himself back together really quickly. If you blast a hole in him, for example, he just goes back together. Really cool in that regard. He also has blasts that he does and all kinds of just different powers like that. That's really cool. Also, he also leads some other mutants sometimes, and it's pretty cool when he does that as well. He's a pretty interesting leader. I think one of the things that really sets him apart too is his kind of cunning deceitfulness, where he'll just kind of retreat sometimes and use his intelligence to figure out ways to mess up the X-Men in the future. Where it'd be him cloning somebody, like using the DNA from Scott and Jean to clone Madeline Pryor or other characters. He's just always really smart, and his scientific edge to him is always pretty interesting. And he always wants to win the war and not the battle, especially, I would say. Very cool character. And I just definitely think, in general, he's one of the most interesting villains. His backstory is also cool, too, how Apocalypse helped make him that way, by the way. But yeah, just really cool character in general. And he's definitely my favorite. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really had a lot of fun making it. If you guys have an idea for another top 10, let me know what you think. And also, if you haven't saw episode 1, my top 10 scary movies, I'll leave it in the link below. This is Alex Blue. I'll see you guys later.